In 23 days, voters head to the polls to pick a president, members of Congress, local legislators, and a number of state propositions and local measures.
This 17 News in-depth political debate is to help inform you about our two local candidates for California's newly drawn 23rd Congressional District, where incumbent Republican Representative Kevin McCarthy squares off against independent challenger Terry Phillips.
And good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Jim Scott.
And I'm Tami Mlcoch. We are here tonight to speak with our local candidates for Congress, Representative Kevin McCarthy and challenger Terry Phillips.
Representative McCarthy is running for his fourth term in Congress now. In 2002, he was elected to the California State Assembly in the 32nd Assembly District. He was the first freshman legislator and first from Kern County to serve as Assembly Republican leader. McCarthy was elected to Congress in 2006 and became House Majority Whip for the U.S. House of Representatives in 2010. Congressman McCarthy is a Bakersfield native and a CSUB graduate.
Terry Phillips is an independent challenger born in Fresno who grew up in the Bay Area. He has lived in Bakersfield since 2004. Phillips is a journalist who has covered world affairs, including the collapse of the Soviet Union and armed conflicts in Afghanistan, Bosnia, Somalia, Haiti, and Iraq. He was also a senior executive for OmniPoint, a wireless telecommunications service provider, and is the sole proprietor of a media consultation company. Terry Phillips is a graduate of Santa Clara University and studied at McGeorge Law School in Sacramento.
Now, both candidates are running to represent California's newly drawn 23rd Congressional District. Here's a look at what the district looks like after the 2010 census. It covers Kern County, parts of San Luis Obispo, and Los Angeles counties.
And we will begin our debate tonight with a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate.
Now, Congressman McCarthy, you won the coin flip and you have elected to go second, so we begin with Terry Phillips. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Tonight, our nation faces some of its toughest challenges since the Great Depression, with our neighbors losing their jobs and their homes, businesses going broke, our troops being injured and killed in foreign wars almost every day, and our government spending money it just doesn't have. Many people have lost hope in the American dream. We have to fix this. Unfortunately, it takes real leadership, bold leadership, and cooperation in order to solve difficult problems. But many of our elected officials confuse partisan politics with leadership. Now, as a party leader, I think that my opponent is part of the problem. I pledge to be part of the solution. I am not beholden to a party or to Wall Street. I'm a small business owner. I am truly independent. And if you elect me to Congress, I promise to represent you.
Congressman McCarthy.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Channel 17 for hosting the debate and for you at home for watching. You know, we gather at one of the most critical times in our nation's history. This November, we'll have a big choice on what this country should become, what type of country we'll leave to our children and our grandchildren. You know, my grandfather worked on the railroad. My father was a firefighter. I learned from a small child, from my family and my teachers, the value of hard work, personal responsibility, and individual initiative. Those were the values I took when I started my first business at age 19, Kevin O's Deli. I still remember building the counter in my dad's garage. I was successful enough from Kevin O's to pay my way through college and get an MBA. You know, every election has to answer this one question. Who is the best choice to fight for your family, fight for you, and yes, even fight for your fears? I firmly believe that people are greater than our problems. So let's join together and put America on the right path and represent the Central Valley with the real fighter.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now let's get to the questions. And as we do, we also have with us tonight 17 News political analysts Cathy, Abernathy, and Tackett, who will each ask 2 questions of an individual candidate.
All right, now we have 90-second answers for each question, gentlemen, and also 60 seconds for a rebuttal. So we want to start, of course, with the economy. It's what everybody's concerned about right now. The unemployment rate in Kern County is hovering around 13% right now, 12.9% as of August. The nation's unemployment rate just dipped below 8%. And this is really the $23 million question, if you will. That's how many people are out of work right now across the country. Give us specifics on what you would do to create jobs in Kern County and across the country. Congressman McCarthy, let's start with you.
Well, first and foremost, the greatest job creator is small business. And if you listen to small business, you go around this country, it's the uncertainty. They don't know what their tax code is going to be next year because the taxes are going to be raised at the end of the year if you don't do something about it. Regulation. They don't know what the regulation is going to change, what their health care costs. And right here in the Central Valley, it's water. So I'm not waiting till next year. I've started working now. We've been able to pass a bill in the House that takes people over fish. That can bring more than 1 million acre-feet of water here directly to the Central Valley. Secondly, we've passed on the floor, extend the tax cut, but reform the tax system. Eliminate the loopholes, lower the corporate tax rate, let America compete worldwide. Because right here in Kern County, we sell a lot of our products around the world. Right in Mojave, we actually go to space commercially. When the FAA tried to shut it down, I was able to stop it. When Barbara Boxer wanted to take our infrastructure, which you have to have an infrastructure that is strong, take our money and send it back to the Bay Area, I was able to stop it. We have to end the uncertainty to build a small business with access to capital. That's one of the bills I was able to pass this year of mine in the Jobs Act that the president actually signed. That's what we have to do to change course.
Mr. Phillips?
Well, I agree with the congressman that uncertainty is a big problem. And unfortunately, one reason we have so much uncertainty is because of the policies that he has pursued in Congress, particularly in the run-up to the increase in the debt ceiling. He brought our government to the brink of shutdown. Because of his poor negotiations, we were left with a lower credit rating. These are things that cause uncertainty. We have uncertainty in the Valley because we don't have enough jobs. We actually have enough jobs. We don't have enough qualified people to take those jobs. And I see the long-term solution to our economic problems being right here at home, in education. And Mr. McCarthy voted to cut Pell grants by 40%. I think that these policies have led to not only uncertainty, but increased unemployment. And these are the kinds of things that I would vote differently for were I elected to Congress.
Congressman, you were raising your hand. You want to rebut something
Well,
there?
first, I like to have a debate, but I like to have a debate of facts, Terry. When I came into office in 2006, the Pell grant was $4,050. It's right today, it's $5,550. It's been increased twice, both times with my votes, a bipartisan vote. So the Pell grant has been increased. You know why? Because I do the business and paid my way through college, so I understand the value. Today, Judy and I are sending our son to college, so we understand the cost. I understand what education can do, but I also understand the facts are true. I voted to raise the Pell grant.
All right, and let's...
May I respond to that?
If you'd like to, sure.
Well, you know, you can, as Mitt Romney, your presidential nominee, said, you can choose your house and you can choose your car, but you can't choose your facts. And you might have voted once for Pell grants, but you have also voted against Pell grants to cut them by 40%. That's the congressional record. And we can, you know, both pick and choose what facts we like. But college students at your alma mater, at Cal State Bakersfield, have complained to me that they risk not being able to finish college because of your votes in Congress. Mm-hmm. That's the record.
What about this 40% cut in Pell grants? Congressman, what's he talking about?
The facts are clear. 2006 Pell grants were $4,050. I've been in office 6 years. Pell grants today are $5,550. I don't know what math you went to, but that's higher. Right now, Washington spends too much. I know my opponent said the other day, he didn't know how much we spent or how much we brought in. We bring in $2.45 trillion, but we spend $3.55. That's $1 trillion a year we borrow, mainly from just five countries, a lot of it being China. I think we need to control what we spend. That means everything has to be on the table. But I increased the Pell grants, but at the same time, we're going to control the spending and grow this economy.
All right, let's move on to the next question, also having to do with the economy. We've had a lot of businesses leave California over the years, basically saying it's not a business-friendly state and they want to go somewhere else. And of course, that's taking a lot of jobs out of California. So what do you plan on doing to get businesses to stop leaving California? Mr. Phillips, we'll start with you.
Well, one of the first things that I would do is reverse the policies that my opponent has voted for in terms of the way that we deal with our own tax money. California is a net exporter of federal taxes. We get back about 79 cents on the dollar. We have sent, over the last 10 years, about $300 billion to Washington, and we've only gotten back a fraction of that. I think part of the job of a congressman is to make sure that we at least get $1 back for every buck that we send to Washington. It would make California a much more competitive state if we weren't running this huge deficit. That is a big problem for our state. But we can solve that problem in part by getting the money that we send to Washington reinvested here. We've been given opportunities to do that, and my opponent has fought against them. And I'm sure we'll talk about high-speed rail this evening. That was one of the most egregious changes, I think, in his voting record. He started out being in favor of it. I know he'll say that the economics of the state have changed. That's partly because of his votes.
Well, we're getting ahead of the... We're putting
yeah,
it...
we'll get back to that.
But it's all related.
Yeah.
All right, Congressman, your response. How would you keep businesses here in California?
First, you want to create business. You want to stop driving them away. You know, California has 37 million people, 12% of the nation's population. But we have 32% of the nation's welfare population. We get almost 50% of our revenue in the state from 144,000 people out of 37 million. You don't drive away the job creators. But first and foremost, you don't sit back. We're an energy community. When Jerry Brown was going to sit and not give the contracts to go forward to be able to drill, I picked up the phone and called him directly. We would talk at night. We didn't go to the press, but we were able to solve the problem. When the FAA wanted to shut down Mojave, where two individuals have invested each more than $500 million, it's 100% occupied out there. We've been able to grow. But because of the state, they're going away. We need to fundamentally change the tax system in California and the regulatory system in California to bring common sense so people will take a risk here and not move to Texas.
All right, gentlemen, this Congress, which you're a member of, has been criticized as really being a do-nothing Congress, especially in this session, that this Congress is known for kicking the can down the road and will only act when a crisis presents itself. Case in point, the fiscal cliff that is approaching. We're looking at automatic spending cuts and new taxes that will kick in at the beginning of the new year unless Congress takes action. And I'm just curious, is this going to be real action or is this going to be a stopgap measure? Why hasn't Congress, two-part question, what's it going to be and why has it taken Congress this long to act on an issue that is so greatly important? Some say if we don't do anything, we're going to be facing another recession.
It's true. It's a fiscal cliff we should not wait for. So let's see what has taken place. Congress is made up of the House and the Senate. The Senate has 39 jobs bills passed by the House that's just sitting there. But let's talk about the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff first is the tax codes. Are the tax cuts going to go and be increased? Well, what has the House done? The House has passed where we've extended them for a year with a time frame to reform the entire tax code and set a structure for it. There is sequestration. So what has the House done? The House has passed a bill to take and protect the military when it comes to sequestration. So the House has acted, the Senate has not. So we don't believe you should wait. I believe we should get the job done. And that's the work we've done. But the most egregious thing of all is our budget. The number one thing government should do is pass a budget. In 4 months and taking the majority, before the majority, Democrats never did. We passed a budget, even tackled the tough questions that would balance and pay off the debt. The president proposed a budget. No one has even voted for it. Not even one Democrat. They all voted against it. The Senate, again, which is craved into Congress, has never even proposed a budget. We need to make fundamental change. There's checks and balances. The House has done their work. We need to need the Senate to do their work as well.
We'll see what happens after the election, I guess. Mr. Phillips, what about the fiscal cliff and the performance of Congress?
Well, let's talk about that fiscal cliff. That fiscal cliff, the result of the Budget Control Act, should never have been passed. Mr. McCarthy was one of the champions of that act. He likes to blame the other party. He always likes to blame the other party whenever he doesn't like the results. But the fact is, he voted for that bill. And that bill should never have been passed. That bill jeopardizes our national security. We risk having our armed forces in a lower state of readiness than ever before because of sequestration. He voted for it. And I don't know why he's now saying we should have done something differently or we should do something differently. It's his votes. It's not only the other party. And by the way, those jobs bills and other bills that he says the Senate isn't passing, they all contain, or many of them contain, poison pills. For instance, getting rid of the Health Care Act. It's really easy to say that you've passed legislation in the House when you know that the Senate will never pass it. These are games. These are political ploys. This is not the way our country is supposed to be solving problems. We're supposed to be working together, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. But all I see in the House of Representatives is two parties sitting on opposite sides of the room refusing to work together. This isn't democracy, and it's not working. This needs to change.
And every one of those
Congressman, you're
39
smiling.
bills, because every one of those 39 bills passed with bipartisan votes.
You can't count one or two Democrats as being bipartisan.
I will tell you, my bill passed with more than 300. You can't change the
300
facts,
Democrats.
Terry,
There aren't
to make
300
it.
Democrats.
There's 435 in the House. So there's
Democrats?
300 people vote
yes,
for it.
and
Because
most of them are Republicans.
That's what makes bipartisan, when Democrats and Republicans
But
vote
when you
together.
put a provision in a bill that you know is going to be rejected, that's not bipartisanship.
That's not what those bills have,
That's
Terry.
just a game. It's just a game.
All right, we want to bring in our political analysts now, Cathy, Abernathy, and Jean Tackett, and we're going to go ahead and start ladies first here, and Cathy is going to ask a question of Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Phillips, if you're elected in November, most pundits will tell you you're going to join a majority Republican House when you get there. They will pick committee chairs. They will pick the members of the committees. The Democrats will get a minority of those seats and on the committees. So you will have to choose. You chose to run with neither party, so you'll have to choose which party to caucus with to get those appointments. Which party would you choose, and why didn't you run on behalf of that party?
I love political pundits. They always know what's going to happen before it happens, and half the time, at least, they're wrong. Because, of course, there are pundits from both parties, and somebody's got to make a mistake. As far as caucusing is concerned, I'm running as an independent. I am an independent. Most people I talk to, whether they're registered as Democrats or Republicans, tell me they're independent. They really don't want to be part of this partisan mess that we have in Washington. When I'm elected, if I'm elected, I will remain an independent. And depending on the numbers, and we really don't know, and we won't know until November 6th, which party of the two parties is going to be in the majority, but depending on the split, my one vote could make a huge difference. But I'm not going to choose in advance to be part of the problem. The problem is that for decades, and increasingly in the last 25 or 30 years, we have had a non-functioning government because of the parties. And I refuse to be part of the problem. That's why I say that my opponent is the problem. As the leader or a leader of his party, he puts party interests ahead of our country's interests. It's a violation of the U.S. government code of ethics that requires, in its first provision, all government officials to put loyalty to country ahead of loyalty to party. If your job in the House of Representatives is to corral your fellow party members to vote the same way as you do, and you yourself vote 97% of the time with your party. No party's perfect. You cannot possibly say that every single position that the Republican Party takes is right and that the Democratic Party takes is wrong, or vice versa. We need cooperation. We're not getting it.
All right, and Jean, now it's your turn to ask a question of Congressman McCarthy.
Congressman, we're experiencing a terrible situation with returning veterans and active duty military of a very high suicide rate. It's well documented, and in some cases it's higher, more suicides than actual active duty people who are killed in service. Have you thought about this, and do you have any plan where we may be able to reduce this high rate of suicides in both our veterans and also our active duty personnel?
Great question. What we're really referring to is PTSD, and also traumatic brain injury. There's been roughly 1.5 million men and women that have served us for the last decade in war. That's roughly, if you look at the statistics, you're going to have 300,000 people affected. The number one thing you first have to do, when I've been studying this, you've got to diagnose it early. So it means you have to screen it. And one of our challenges is you get screened when you leave. But when you leave, you want to get home. And you're also youthful, young, and think nothing's wrong with you. So you miss it, and it comes upon later, and sometimes it's the spouse that finds it. So I propose to be screened later as well and look even different. And we've taken it a step further. In the appropriation bill, in the military con bill, we've added $35 million because how we treat them may not be the best. We need some research at the same time into this. Every single war we've been in, there's been a new trauma coming back, a new way of a disease or others that we have to treat. This one I want to get ahead of. So we've been able to add the money. Unfortunately, the Senate did not act, so it's sitting out there. I want to see this brought to fruition. I want to see us have the research and development, but I also want to see that we're able to diagnose it earlier. That's why I've been working with Mark Ashley right here at our Center for Neural Skills when it comes to traumatic brain injury as well.
If I may follow up on that, the problem that Mark Ashley has encountered and has been battling for years is with the insurance providers, in that when a person, whether it be a civilian or a serviceman, suffers a traumatic brain injury, insurance companies do not cover that person, the carrier of the policy, for the full term required to achieve productivity and to get back into society. A lot of these people with TBI have to go back and start learning their ABCs again and learning shapes and how to count to 10. And so that rehab period is 18 months. That's a conservative estimate. A lot of insurance plans curtail their coverage to half of that. What would you, as congressman, do to change and get the insurance business, the insurance industry's attention on this and exact some change so these people can get back into society rather than living at home in assisted care?
Texas has a model that works pretty well when it comes to TBI. When I talked to Mark Ashley, the other reason you have to get it sooner. So we have proposed, we talk about new health care, repealing Obamacare. We wipe away the threshold that stops the insurance company from doing that. You want to be able to treat the person all the way through. You also want to be able to have the individual pick their doctor, because lots of times they run them around and it takes